St. Andrews has brought me nearer to Jesus and continues to in new ways every day.
We are invited into following Jesus on the way of life.
I feel like I'm at home when I'm here, and my relationship with the Lord has just begun. I didn't have one until I came here, and I'm so thankful.
I really see the heart of Jesus in this community, and it's just like one beautiful, multi-generational family.
That's what the entire Bible is about. Receiving the goodness of God and His mercy and grace and forgiveness, and that being the catalyst and the power to step on the journey of following Him, following Jesus.
God put that in us, a natural desire to serve Him, serve others, and that's what we're doing here.
I grew up with 5 sisters and no brothers. I am amazingly well adjusted for as little therapy as I've had. I was the second oldest. When I was about 11, there were all 6 of us in the house. My older sister was 12, and the youngest one was 1. And there were days where we just overwhelmed Mom. I mean, can you imagine? 6 kids, toddlers running around, And my sister, just a year younger, she's 13 months younger than me, she loved to irritate me. And what irritated me is that she wanted to irritate me, if you get that. She had this thing she would do to me, like she would do this to me. And that's fine for a few minutes, but she would not stop. And then she would get right in my face, not touch, but right in my face, and she would just do this and make this face at me until finally I just did what boys did. I pushed her. And then she calls out, "Mom, Gary pushed me." And Mother intervenes. "Why did you push your sister?" "Well, she almost touched me." "Go back to the back porch and sit there and wait until your father gets home." So I'd be sitting back there. There were days when there were 3 or 4 of us sitting on that porch waiting for Dad. When it was a 4-child day, Dad knew it wasn't a good experience when he came home. My father was a Helms Bakery man. He left at 5 in the morning, came back. He also did a barber on Sunday, but he would come back at sunset. We would be sitting on that porch waiting for Dad to get home. And what is he going to do with us? Because Mom had it up to here. Just hold on to that thought for a moment. And I want you to do something for me. I want you to hold up 2 fingers like this in front of you. Hold up your 2 fingers. Now I want you to look at your right finger. Focus on your right finger. Keep it close to you. Focus on your right finger. And be aware that your left finger is in the background helping define your right finger. Do you see how that works? Do you see how that works? Yep, 2 of you. Now shift to the other finger, your focus to the other finger, and you'll see that your right finger moves to the background. See how that works? Okay, a little interesting experiment. That's fine. What's the point of that? Well, Polanyi talks about, Michael Polanyi is a philosopher, talks about the ground by which we understand things. What's the background that helps define things that we're looking at? So if we're looking at the Father, what is the background that helps define the Father? Is it your experience of a father you wait only for him to discipline you when he gets home? Is that your experience? Or do we project into the Father, our Father in heaven, the failures of our fathers or the men in our world? Perhaps Father was distant, uncaring, self-absorbed, never present, a promise breaker. What do we project into the Father? What's the background by which you understand the Father in heaven? Father was an alcoholic, maybe abusive. And all of that pain is the background by which we understand the Father. That's one way. But the real quest is to understand the revelation. We can put our faith in what we have experienced and project as the background, or we can put our faith in what God has said about who He is, and that is what faith is. Faith is believing what God has said. And so the background by which we understand the Father in that revelation then helps us, because he then becomes the background when we understand ourselves. And that also becomes the background in understanding the life among us. So what begins is your notion of who is God. The series is called Is Your God Real? Because people have these notions about who God is. There are several religious systems. There is a religious system that if you die killing for your God, you go to heaven. Well, that's not true. That God is not real. Others believe that if you work hard enough and keep all the rules of their organization and go door to door, maybe God will let you live on the earth forever. Well, that's not true. That God is not real. But you and I have these illusions of who God is, and what we want is for you to get a grasp of this, encounter this glorious God who has made himself known as Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Today we want to talk about the love of the Father. So we can project that background into understanding the Father, distant, not caring, not one I could trust, or we can believe the revelation about him. Let's talk about the revelation. I'm going to read from what's called the high priestly prayer in John chapter 20. It's written by John, by the Spirit, through John. John is called the apostle of love. And in it, Jesus is praying for his disciples. And then in the verse 20, and I'm going to read a few more verses, but I want to key on that verse, 17:23. Because that's one of the verses when I saw it, and it's not a matter of what you look at, it's a matter of what you see is really important. And when I finally saw that verse, it made me pause years ago and go, wow, that's unbelievable. But I got to believe it. So I'm going to invite you to stand for the hearing of the gospel. And Jesus prays, "My prayer, Father, is not for them alone. I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message." That's you and me. Now he's praying for us. "That all of them may be one, Father, just as you are in me and I am in you. May they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you sent me. I have given them the glory that you gave me, that they might be one, even as we are one, I and them, and you and me. May they be brought to complete unity, to let the world know that you sent me and have loved them even as you have loved me." Hear that again. "That you have loved them even as you have loved me." This is the gospel. I invite you to be seated. What is he saying here? What he is saying is that the Father in heaven loves you and every man, woman, and child who has put their faith in Jesus Christ as much as he loves Jesus Christ. That's pretty amazing. Because when I look at myself in the mirror, I know all the warts, I know all the stuff, and the evil ones, they're whispering about all the reasons why I don't measure up. Is that true of you? One of the fears that we have is if you really know me as an individual, you won't like me. That's why we put on these masks and we sort of try to posture and be nice, because if you really knew what went on in my head, you would say, oh, wow. Isn't that true? We're afraid, because if you reject me when I let you know me, then that's all I got. So people walk around with masks on. Even in a marriage, they do that. But here, Jesus tells us the Father loves me as much as he loves him. I want you to say that with me. The Father in heaven, repeat after me, loves me as much as he loves Jesus Christ. Now you anchor that in the background of understanding the posture the Father has towards you, is that he loves you and cares for you, and you are as priceless to him as Jesus Christ is. Now you ponder that for a while, and it'll revolutionize your understanding of you and your relationship to the Father. One of the things about the love of God, because you're going, yeah, but what about? You know, you have all that what about language going in your heart. You got to understand who this God is who loves us as much as he loves Jesus Christ. If we go back to Exodus chapter 33, Moses there is leading the people out of Egypt, and they are at the mountain. And to paraphrase him, he says to God, I'm not going to go a step further without your presence. I'm not going to do this without your presence. And then in verse 18, he says, show me your glory. You ever thought about what it'd be like if you were there on the mountain and got to see the glory of God? What would that look like? You know, I always imagined the glory of God would be like a flash of blinding sunlight, like a supernova, and overwhelming power and smoke and splendor and majesty. But you know what God says in the next verse? Okay, I'll show you my goodness. Moses wants to see God's glory, and God says, okay, I'll show you my goodness. I'll let all of my goodness go before you. And that's what he does. In fact, his goodness is so overwhelming that he has to hide Moses from it. His goodness, his favor, his beauty, his majesty. He says, the glory is my goodness. Now here's a thought for you. You know, we often think God is good. We sing it, we say it, God is good. Like he gets to check off all the boxes of being good, therefore he's good. You know, this is what it means to be good. You check off all those boxes, so God makes the grade. We don't miss, you know, if you miss one, you fail. So I've missed a couple of being good. We have this idea, like Aristotle's pyramid, that God is at the top of the good mountain, the good list. You know, he's the very pinnacle of good list. But that's not it at all. The reality is God, the Father, is goodness himself. Goodness itself. So he becomes the background for understanding what is good, because he is goodness itself. He defines what is goodness. Just as Jesus said, I am the truth. He defines what is real. And John says God is love. So he's not just loving, but he is love itself. So he defines what love is. His very existence and character and nature is a reflection of what is love. I hope you can get a hold of that for you, and understanding that who this good God is, this good Father that we just sang about. His goodness is self, that he loves you as much as Jesus Christ, he loves me as much as Jesus Christ, is why I can believe Romans 8:28, that in all things, in all circumstances, he's working for my good. Can you believe that? Is that the posture you take with life? That I know, even when I don't understand, when life is hard, you see, for you and me, most Americans, when we want good, we want easy. Isn't that true? We want smooth. We don't like rocky. We want it easy. And if it's not easy, and it has no tears attached to it, and it goes the way we want, that's good. But that's not good. That's us. And God is always working for my good. And what is the ultimate good? The ultimate good for you and me is that he uses the circumstances of life to mold us into the image of Jesus Christ. That's the good. And Jesus was made perfect through suffering. How do you think he's going to do it with us? But I can believe he's always working for my good. When I held my daughter when she lost her first baby, he's working for our good. I can always trust him because he is goodness itself. If I were to ask you to write a one-sentence describing the love of God, what language would you use? Have you ever thought about doing that? What language would you use? I love the way the Apostle John does it in 1 John chapter 3. It says, how great is the love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called the children of God, and that is what we are. How great is the love the Father has lavished on us. Now, the word lavish is not there. It says in the Greek that he's bestowed it on us, but I. Howard Marshall says that the New International Version, this translation, really gets to the heart of the meaning, that he has lavished it on us. It's a great love that he has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God, and that is what we are. What is lavish? You know, when you think about God's lavish love for you, what is lavish? We have our granddaughter just in December turned 1 year old, and my daughter called and asked if we could take some clothes that our granddaughter has outgrown and find a home for them among those who have less. And so we said yes. So Susan was up there visiting and taking care of her for the day, came home. Some clothes is a carload of clothes. I unloaded bags and boxes of baby clothing. I looked at some of this stuff because of the generosity and the overwhelming love of two families, of aunts and uncles, and of friends, my daughter and son-in-law's friends. I looked at it. There is designer clothes in there with tags on it. I said, I didn't pay that much for my dress shirt. And here this child is just being lavished, with more than she can use. That's why they were unused. She could not wear them fast enough. And she has no clue of how much she's been lavished on. She just toddles around the house investigating, and here I am with bags of baby clothing that we're going to find mothers in need that we can give it to. Lavish love. The Father's love for you is lavish. It's more than you can contain. It's more than you understand. You are like a toddler roaming around when somebody else has got tons of stuff that you can't even use. That's his love for you. That's how powerful it is. That's how abundant it is. That's how majestic it is. That we would be called children of God, and that's what we are. Now, there is one of the things that people I've heard, and it's incorrect. We're all children of God. You would fail the Bible test. All are created by God, all bear the image of God, but John says in John chapter 1, only those who have received Christ Jesus are given the right, the privilege to be called children of God. It is through faith in Jesus Christ that we are adopted as children of God. And that's what he's saying here. That lavish love has made us children of God. There is no pain that the Father was not willing to go through. There was no loss he was not willing to endure. There was no horrific shame and embarrassment that he was not willing to walk through in an effort to get you to know his Son so that you can know him. He was willing to pay any price for you. That's the lavish and great love that he has. He would rather see Jesus Christ hanging on a cross in all that shame and agony, thrown into the arms of hell, than risk an eternity without you. How lavish is his love and pursuit of you. Do you understand that? You are children through faith in Jesus Christ. This is the love of the Father. You know, if you read the Gospels closely, like John, Jesus doesn't talk about loving his disciples until the night before his death. Before that, it's always, I'm here because the Father sent me. I'm here because the Father loves you. I'm here to go to the cross because it's the Father who has sent me to redeem the lost children. That is part of the gospel is we have lost sight of the fact that it is the Father who has instigated this whole work of salvation so that you can know his love. Jesus died to reestablish that relationship with the Father. That's what he wanted. Because the Father was desperately in love with his children. Children have access. In the old culture, in the ancient cultures, if you read the book of Esther, she was going to go in and visit the king, talk to the king about something. And she had everybody praying for her because if she went in there unannounced and uninvited, she could get slain if the king didn't raise his scepter. Nobody got access to the throne room unless they were invited in, except the children. Children can come and go as they please. When I was a young pastor, after services, I would be up in my office tightening up a few things before I would leave. Inevitably, somebody would be at my door, standing there. They wouldn't come in because apparently my office is the Holy of Holies. People don't just walk in on it. So they would be there talking, and here comes two little kids, and they just scoot between their legs or under their arms, and they would come bounding in here, and they would run over to my desk, and they would be opening my desk drawers while I'm talking, and they're rummaging, looking for candy and all kinds of things that I would hide in my desk for them. And why did they do that? They do that because they're my children. And they knew they were always welcome where Dad was. That's the heart of the Father for you. That's the heart of the Father. This great, powerful, lavish love that has made us his children. That's why we are told in Hebrews chapter 4, verse 16, let us come boldly into the throne of grace, confident to receive mercy and grace in our time of need, because we're the children. We're the children. So his love for me is as great as his love for Jesus Christ. His love for you is great and lavish. No cost was too great for you to experience this love. He was willing to do anything it took for you. We're told in Psalm 107, his love is unfailing. We're told in Psalm 136, it says it 26 times, his love endures forever. The Hebrew is hesed. It is a steadfast love. It's unmovable. It's not going to get pulled away from you when you fail. It doesn't get pulled away from you when you don't meet up your expectations or somebody else's. It doesn't get pulled away from you. He never turns his back on us. His steadfast love endures forever. That love that comes at us because he is good and because he has already paid the price for us, that whoever has put their faith in Jesus Christ, this is the posture of the Father for you and me. Do you believe this? Is this the background by which you understand the Father? Because if that's the case, then you can understand who you are as priceless in the eyes of God. Irrespective of what the world says, irrespective of what the nagging things say in your head about a way you don't measure up. God is the one who gives the definitive declaration, and you are priceless in his arms. Because you and I, what do we learn? We learn very early that if you do well, you get liked. If you're good looking, you get liked. If you got talent, you get liked. If you can run quickly, you get liked. If you can dance nicely, you get liked. Everything we do, we find performance that we do well. Happens in our professional world as well. And then we project that onto God, that if I do well, whatever that looks like for you, then God is going to accept me and I'll be okay with God. You got to back up. You got to back up to when you held your firstborn or your newborn child or that newborn niece or nephew, and you felt that love just well up in them, and they have done nothing except exist, and you would be willing to give your life for them. They're the most priceless thing in the world. Where do you think that comes from? That's the love of God has for you. It is flowing and being mirrored in us as we hold those newborns. Just as there, and we would give our life for them. That's how the Father looks at you. That's how the Father looks at you. So you have a Father in heaven who loves you as much as his perfect Son, Jesus Christ, his only begotten Son, with a lavish love and a powerful love and an unyielding love, a steadfast love. When we had just arrived at Huntington Beach, I think I'd been there a month. Everyone after service was outside. I later found this out from my friend Jeannie. She became a lifelong friend. She's with the Lord now. But she had gone back in the sanctuary, and there in the choir loft was the pastor's daughter. She loved any colored dress as long as it was pink, so she had this pink frilly dress on, which I now have seen her daughter in. And she was on the back row, jumping from seat to seat. And she jumped, and she got all the way to the end. Jeannie said she got off, and she turned around, and she started jumping again, from seat to seat. And Jeannie said to her, "Little girl, I don't think you should be jumping on the seats in the choir loft." And she stopped midway, and she looked at her and said, "Do you know who my daddy is?" And she continued to jump. Sometimes your children surprise you and mortify you. Do you know who my daddy is? When life comes at you hard and crashes in, you need to stand up and say, "Do you know who my daddy is? Do you know who my father is?" When the world is telling you the wrong color or the wrong this or the wrong that, you need to say, "Do you know who my father is?" Sometimes you need to look in the mirror and say to yourself, "Do you have any idea who your father is and how great and powerful his love is for you, how deep his love is for you? Do you know who he is?" Because that defines who you are.